Welcome to Keto and Crime. As promised, I have a very special video. Today we're going to kind of do an overall wrap-up of the Daybell case with one of my favorite true crimers. I have Annette from True Crime Faith and 𝗙𝗂𝗃 with me. She is also a USA Today best-selling author of true crime books, and she is just an overall true crime fanatic like I am. I really enjoy her stuff. If you want to see one of the best timelines of the Daybell case that I've ever seen, definitely check out her video on that. I'll link it down below for you. And welcome, Annette. Welcome to Keto and Crime.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate that. Some high praise there. Thanks.
Well, it is. I have done over almost 200 videos on this case, including a deep dive on every single person involved, but I've never actually just sat down and put a timeline out of everything. And so
kind of nuts, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, welcome. Tell my all the viewers a little bit about yourself and the channel and what drew you to true crime, and also your book. I know you've got a new one that just came out.
Yeah, so true crime, it's one of those things. A lot of people have wondered why I suddenly, in their minds, suddenly went into true crime stuff. But the reality is I've always been interested in suspense and true crime and that kind of thing. I literally read my first book on profiling by the father of profiling, John Douglas, back in about '96. So it's been a while. But I started out, I've always wanted to be a writer. I used to say it was around 2nd or 3rd grade, but then I found a photograph of my 5th birthday where I got my little favorite blue typewriter. So I was like, oh, that was earlier. So it's been forever. I started out writing mostly actually Latter-day Saint fiction based stuff. I did historical fiction, women's fiction, a lot of romance. I co-founded an anthology, or people think anthology and they get scared of that word, but essentially collections of novellas. And that was, the funny thing with that is people said, I'm not against spicy romance. Let me just put that out there. But back when like 50 Shades and those kinds of things are really big, we realized, me and a couple of close friends that were also writers, we realized there was nothing out there that was PG-13 rated that was not also religious. Yeah. So it was always inspirational. It was Amish. It was Christian. And I remember seeing one writer actually on Facebook getting very frustrated saying, I write the quote unquote clean romance, but I can't call it Christian because I'm Jewish. You know, it was a problem. So we said, there is a gap in the market. So we founded the Timeless Romance Anthology series and the spin-off series. I was the original editor for those, and they won awards and all kinds of fun stuff like that. But then I got darker and heavier, and then I decided to go full on into suspense writing, and that's where Just One More came in. And so yeah, that one is about it's my first national book. It's about essentially a librarian who starts wondering, she starts thinking something's off with her husband. And so she starts doing research, as a librarian does, learns a few things and winds up dead. So that's not a spoiler because she's dead by the end of chapter 1, but her best friend finds her body and it's up to her to figure out what happened.
Wow.
So that's what
I'm titillated. I will be purchasing it and reading it and probably doing a review of it with your permission.
Oh, please.
I love,
absolutely.
I'm like you. I love reading. I'm Gen X millennial. So I grew up with all the the old unsolved mysteries and that thing. But I was originally a horror nut. I'm still a horror nut. I do a lot of horror reviews on this channel, and that just naturally led into true crime, and I love it, and kind of like you. And then of course there's been a lot of cases that have really captured my imagination. I've done a lot of deep dives, but nothing like the Daybell case. I don't know why. And it was just a fleeting blurb. I saw on the
Mhm.
news one time, and I clicked on an article, and I've been hooked ever since. It's
Well, and the interesting thing is the way I specifically got hooked into this case was because Chad was an LDS publisher. I have friends who published with him. I have a friend who was rejected by Tammy, got a rejection letter from Tammy. And so I've been aware of all of this since about the day or two after Tammy died, when Chad mentioned on Facebook. And all of us in the industry, and this is kind of a small community, we thought, oh my goodness, that's so sad, so odd. And I thought, my little true crime brain went, something's off. And then as the weird other things, oh, now he's married. Oh, there's children missing. I said in a forum, guys, this is starting to sound like a Dateline episode. And I had some people saying, oh, don't be judgmental. And I thought, And now how many Datelines have there been? I think 7.
So, if only they had listened to you, been like, somebody go investigate this stuff.
Well, and part of me wants to say, if only people had listened to Heather Daybell and Charles Vallow, and there are so many moments of if only, that could have prevented some of these tragedies. It's just been wild.
And I know you're active LDS, and so you really have a good understanding of that doctrine. I do cults and religious deep dives on my channel as well. I'm not calling LDS a cult, but when this case came out, I did do a deep dive into the history of the LDS church. But there's a lot of things I know I probably missed. I also read every book that Chad Daybell wrote, and I summarized them and reviewed them on my channel. And there's some weird stuff there, especially how he uses Emma Daybell as a main character in 2 of his series. His connection to her is weird,
creepy,
to say the least.
I haven't actually read his books. I haven't had the heart to go there, because I know he's a crappy writer, but good for you. I probably will. Like, once I can bite the bullet.
He has a lofty opinion of himself. Now, I grew up Pentecostal, just evangelical Christian, and then I was an atheist for a long time, and I have returned to faith in the last year. It's I go to a little Methodist church, but I wouldn't necessarily call myself Methodist. But really what I learned is the Mormon view of end times is pretty much the same as every other mainstream Protestant church. It's really no different. But he took it in a direction I'm not quite sure of. I mean, he had himself exalted as the one that was literally paving the way for Jesus Christ. And I'm just like, Chad, I think
he went off the rails on so many levels. And that's one thing I've tried to do on my channel, is explain some of the LDS views and maybe where he got some of his ideas and then jumped off a cliff with them and turned them into something completely different. But honestly, a lot of Latter-day Saint theology comes straight from the Bible. We do believe in the Bible. So
it does. It does. So I wanted to ask, as far as the things that we heard, the castings and light and dark. I know light and dark is not really a thing, at least not the way they used it. It's not a thing in any church that I've ever researched. Castings, I mean, we've all heard of exorcisms. The Catholic Church has been doing that for centuries. Do the Mormons, do the LDS, do they have something like that in their regular mainstream doctrine?
It's one of those things where it's more of a fringe thing. I wouldn't say it's like someone who is Chad fringe, but there's some historical stories about that kind of thing. I've personally never heard of, I've never had a friend or a church leader or a congregation member ever mention that kind of thing, ever experienced that kind of thing. I think I can't speak for all Latter-day Saints, of course, but I think it's something that would technically be possible, but rare. But it goes back to like Christ casting out, the spirits out of the swine. I mean, that's about as far as it goes. It's like, it exists possibly somewhere. Rarely. Yeah, absolutely.
So, and when people talk about that, I always say, hey, calling Chad Daybell LDS is a little bit like calling the FLDS LDS. They are splinter groups. They've been cast off by the mainstream religion. It's the same as calling the Branch Davidians Seventh-day Adventists, because that's where they came from. They just took it and went in a total dark direction. So,
and Chad, the church does not comment on excommunications. They won't confirm or deny. someone has confirmed somehow that Chad was excommunicated after his arrest.
Mhm.
And I believe, I mean, had they known of the affair, had they have known any of his teachings, it would have happened years before.
Oh yeah.
It just would have. Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that he called himself LDS and purported to believe those things actually makes me very mad. That's no.
And I always want to say that up front. This is not a judgment on the Latter-day Saints. I don't judge any religion by anything, because there's good people and bad people in all religions, and that's just
amen to that. Yeah, absolutely,
and
100%.
And since doing this case, I have come into contact with so many Mormons that I find, in general, the denomination or religion is full of just the most wonderful, upstanding, nice people. At least the ones I've met. So I want to say that up front.
I'm so glad. As you said, every religion, every faith has a span. So I'm glad you've come across a lot of good ones. That's great.
I have. Well, all right. Well, let's talk about the case. Again, everybody go check out Annette's timeline of it. Again, I will link it down there and up above. Let's talk about it. Who was in your opinion, the major mastermind of all of this? Was it Lori? Was it Chad? Was it equal?
Chad.
You think it was Chad?
Chad, I think he's always been a narcissist, potentially sociopath, and I think it was when Lori entered the picture, his goddess, what that was eating it up.
His Elena.
Yes, exactly. When someone like her entered and was just worshiping at his feet, I think that was the match that lit the fuse. But he was driving the bus. It's completely mixed metaphors there, but I think she's the one who kind of got it going, but he was absolutely the puppet master behind it all, I think.
I tend to agree. I think he always had it in him, and he never had the opportunity. I think he has totally brainwashed at least 2 of his 5 children. But as far as having influence over a large scope of people, no. And then he met Lori, who probably, Tammy was probably the type that would humor him. I mean, she was a good wife. She would humor him, and she would probably secretly roll her eyes, if not blatantly roll her eyes at a lot of stuff. And they were a prepper family, and there's nothing wrong with being a prepper family. So she had her beliefs, but I certainly don't think she was as radical as Emma and Garth made her out to be. I don't see her assigning numbers to little children in Bible school, which is what they were trying to say.
That was so offensive. Yeah.
I know.
We believe very clearly that children are incapable of sin. They're innocent. So the idea that Chad would think toddlers are demons, zombies that deserve to have pain. No. Like, I'm sorry. What did Jesus say about children? Like, come on.
Yeah. Suffer the little children to come unto me. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. It makes me so mad. Exactly. Yeah. Yep, agreed.
And then he met Lori, who was just, Miss I worship you, goody two shoes. And then he saw an opportunity. She brought in Alex and Melanie Palawowski, who were pretty weak-minded to be brainwashed.
As well. I think she was naive. Yeah.
Yeah, Melanie Gibbs, all kind of weak-willed. And he saw an opportunity to build the Church of the Firstborn, and anything that was an obstacle to him or could provide him money. Hence Charles. Hence, I think they were trying to kill Brandon Boudreaux so that they could have access to his money through Melanie.
Yep.
And then they saw the opportunity of getting rid of the children, which were obstacles, because Tylee did not like Chad. She made no bones about that. And I'm sure
she could read him.
She could. She was a smart little lady.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just wish she had stayed with her grandparents, with her grandmother, or at least. And it looked like Larry and Kay had a lot of love for her too. I wish she had just taken JJ and gone to Louisiana. I so wish.
Yeah. And that's one thing that blows my mind, that wasn't an option in Lori's mind. I don't get that. And I wonder, when it comes to all of those people you listed who were just naive and gullible, I keep thinking, where did your critical thinking go? I mean, yes. It's hard. I mean, there's that blurred line there of spirituality, and say, well, I've experienced this thing. I had this feeling of this, but you still don't leave your brain outside the door.
No.
And one thing I've mentioned a few times on my channel, and this is actually Jason William. He mentioned this, and I was like, thank you. Where Chad had no right to be receiving revelation for somebody else, that
Mm.
we believe that you have your stewardship. And he used that word, and I was like, thank you. Because we think the stewardship, that is whatever you are responsible for.
Mm.
So when I had small children, they're my stewardship. If I'm teaching a class of young women, I have a limited stewardship over how can I help this young woman who might be struggling with a bully at school, that kind of thing. But to have some dude from a different state just say, I know who you were in a past life. Here's my information about you. I know these things. He had no stewardship. So that level of critical thinking, I'm like, that's a basic tenet. Why are you guys just throwing up your hands and believing some dude who has absolutely no stewardship in your life? That makes no sense to me at all.
Yeah. And when I saw the interview that Nate Eaton did with Summer Shiflett in at CrimeCon, it truly cemented in my mind that Chad had to be the mastermind, because according to Summer, Lori is so deep in her delusion, she still believes everything that she did. She believes that she talks to Tylee and Charles and Tammy and JJ beyond the veil. She really believes she did the right thing for all of them. So she was just, I think she's so deep in her delusion that, and he fed that. He caused that. I mean, yes, she had problems, obviously, but he really brought that out in her.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah, and the fact that I think in the same interview, Summer said that that Chad, lost my train of thought for just a moment here.
Well, he said that he isolated her from her entire support system.
Yes, the Chad isolated her, and again, this does not absolve Lori of anything.
No,
but it is interesting that Lori's family was dark, not Chad's.
No, it was all 5 of his children and his wife until he decided to get rid of his wife.
Yeah, and then it's come moved to me, and to this tiny town that's windy and cold and miserable, away from the hot temperatures you like, away from your support system. So yeah, he was in control. And I feel so bad for Tammy, because there is some evidence that he was at least emotionally abusive, even to the point of like how he wouldn't let her play video games. And pulled out the idea of like, your grandmother came to me in a vision and said she's mad that you're playing Candy Crush or whatever game it was at the time. Like, that manipulative much? Like, come on.
You really think somebody in the afterlife is concerned with what video games you're playing? I think God has bigger fish to fry.
An idea that he actually called her lazy at her funeral, like over the pulpit. That I was stunned. And then when I think it was when Garth was on the stand mentioning, oh, she got tired and was worn out because she worked so hard. I don't think he realized how that came across. I'm like, yeah, she was the breadwinner because Chad sat on his butt. Yeah, she went to these exercises and she did this and she did that, and of course she got worn out. She's not lazy.
No, I'm 49 now, so she was the same age as me then. I'm going through perimenopause. All the symptoms they linked off, from bruising easily to fatigue to mood swings, depression, all of that is because of your hormones.
Check.
Yep. And the fact she was going to at least 4 to 5 exercise classes per week, plus walking at least 10,000 steps a day on her Fitbit, and had a pretty physical job, and she was running his book publishing company. Yeah, she was tired.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah.
Oh,
and probably
for sure.
Still cleaning the house and taking care of the pet cemetery, because I doubt he washed the dish.
Oh, he wasn't washing dishes. Absolutely not. So I think she deserved to play Candy Crush. Come on.
Yeah. She deserved to sleep in on Saturday and go to bed at dinner if she wanted to.
When Emma said, she slept in when she had the opportunity, I'm like, I've done that my entire life. Talk to any teenager. I don't have kids at home anymore, so like they're all grown up. So it was nice when I didn't have to get up to bring them to school and make sure they had food and lunch and whatever. I don't have to do that. I'm sleeping in.
Oh, I have a day to myself. Yeah, I have a day to myself. I'm going to sleep.
Exactly. Yes. Oh, that's a sign that we're both going to die, apparently.
I know.
Whatever.
And then when she was talking about her Fitbit, you know, all that data, the Fitbit, I'm obsessed with my Fitbit. I mean, I love it. And I can tell you.
Yep, I got my
Yeah,
watch.
he was talking about how she would sit and, you know, swing her arm. I'm like, honey, the Fitbit does not just record steps if you do like this. You either actually have to really be walking or you're doing some serious air boxing like this. It'll record if you do this. But if she's sitting around just doing that, you have to be in great shape.
That's burning calories, right? Yeah, that's burning calories all by itself.
And it gets your, you have to be in good shape to do thousands of these a day.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. I've experimented with my Fitbit in the past. It's you can't, it's very hard to get to fake steps. I mean, it's possible to get a few, but thousands upon thousands at night. No. She was alive and working and active at night. Yep.
And
agreed.
And I haven't noticed it until just like this week. Emma's transformation from older pictures of her when she looked like a twin of Tammy to now looking like 𝗚𝗏.
Isn't that disturbing? Yeah.
It is very disturbing.
Longer hair, bleached it. She's trying to look like Lori for her dad, I think.
Yeah. And either that's some weird Oedipus, you know, thing going on. Oedipus is not the right word, but you know what?
There's a version of the female version, and I'm forgetting the name now. But yeah, I know what you mean. That's kind of what it feels like. Yeah, it's almost that she and her father have this weird closeness. That's I don't think it's sexual, but I think it's weirdly, inappropriately close for a father and a daughter. If that makes sense. And it was also disturbing. You know, when you saw the video of him when he's in the cop car and she's talking to him, he's sobbing. And of course, you know, Chad the slug has no emotion, but she's crying there. But on the stand, not a tear for her mother.
No.
In fact, Pryor, unfortunately, I think I kind of put a hot spotlight on it accidentally, because when she got on the stand, he stopped and very compassionately, which was not his normal voice. He said things like, "Oh, well, here's some tissue. If you need a break, if you get emotional, it's okay. Let me know. We can stop." Not needed. She was just a mannequin. That's it.
And sat there for the hour and a half that Pryor direct examined her and just trashed her mother, called her mother sick, weak, lazy, and just as twisted as Chad. And it just and then Garth, I think Garth is just really, really brainwashed and a weak man. I think he knows better. But
I think on some level, I think he knows better and has a conscience, unlike his father. So I think he may be conflicted and yet brainwashed on some level. Yeah. So my last video, actually, I was wondering, what about the other three, since we didn't hear from them? And Pryor said we'd hear from 3 or 4. We didn't. So I'm wondering, are they just afraid to testify? Are they conflicted? They don't know what to believe? Are they, I don't know. Have they come around and realize the truth?
I hope so, because if you go back to the old, was it the CBS or ABC interview that was done with all 5, you know, Seth, Leah.
48 hours, I think.
48 hours. Seth, Leah, and Mart were kind of quiet. Emma was the mouthpiece for the most part. And then after that, it was Garth. So either they're so browbeaten and they're conflicted, or they just don't want them talking for fear that they'll screw up. And Garth did screw up. I mean, he told 2 different stories about the night Tammy died on the stand. At first he said his father came and got him, and then he heard a thump and his father came and got him. I'm like, which is it?
Yeah.
You know.
And then Lindsay Blake said, "Where's the thump?" when they both admitted she didn't fall out of bed. And then of course his coworker, who said that Garth found his mother and Dad was nowhere. Yeah. So which is it, Garth? Probably that first one.
Exactly.
With McKay. Yeah.
And what do you think happened to Tammy? Do you think it was Alex or do you think it was Chad?
I think it was both together. I think one probably held her down and made those bruises, and the other one asphyxiated her somehow. I really hope it was quick and painless, but oh gosh, it's heartbreaking to think. I I have wondered maybe they did it in, you know, the little cozy cone addition to the house. If maybe she was sleeping there instead of Chad. And since it's not, doesn't have central heating, maybe it was colder and her body cooled faster. But rigor mortis would have set in by the time Garth found her anyway. Yeah, I think the thud, if there was one, was transporting her body from one place to another and then having to explain it.
Yeah.
But what do you think?
I really thought it was, I thought it was Alex. I was just of the opinion that Chad would not get his hands dirty in any way, shape, or form, and he probably, maybe Alex did it all. And I honestly always had it in my head that it was done right there in their bed. And then they just left her. She probably fell out, you know, when they finished with her. I had hoped that after the autopsy, it would reveal that she was poisoned, because to me, that would be more merciful than being held down and smothered. But I think she
poisoned to be unconscious when she's smothered.
Exactly.
Something, yeah.
And I really think, but I'm beginning to now believe that Chad might have at least held her down. Now, as far as
Alex,
as far as JJ, I believe he was killed in Alex's apartment. I believe he was asphyxiated with the plastic bag and then transported to Chad Daybell's. I believe 𝗙lie went with Alex willingly for some reason to Daybell's property, and I believe she was shot there. I believe they shot her and then burned her.
That would explain some of the head trauma. That would explain the gunshot that the neighbor heard.
Right.
So, yeah, I've wondered if she was killed the night before or the morning of. But, yeah, why would she not go with Alex? She just been to Yellowstone with him. You know, he's Uncle Alex. You know, I mean, he shot Charles, but...
But according from what I've heard, Lori drove a wedge between Charles and 𝗙lie, that she didn't want them to be close for whatever reason, and so she fanned that flame quite a bit.
Yep, for sure.
Because Colby loved Charles. Her son just absolutely loved Charles.
Viewed him as a father figure, yeah. For sure. It's the whole thing is so crazy.
Yeah. It's I don't know. It's just depressing. And then to use religion as a cover for it. And
justification.
And I believe if they hadn't have got caught, more people would have died. I absolutely believe they would have killed David Warwick eventually, because David Warwick was pushing back. That was pretty obvious. I think they would have killed Melanie and David, and I think they probably would have went after Brandon Boudreaux again.
And probably Brandon's children with Melanie, because they were dark.
Yeah, they were dark. Everybody was, even Colby Ryan's wife was, because she didn't put up with their bullshit. She was rated as dark. Colby was light, but his wife was dark. So anybody...
You just want to smack Chad. Like, what? Dude! Oh, no.
And what about Alex? Do you think Alex was systematically poisoned and that caused the blood clots, or do you think he actually had a problem and just that was a coincidence?
See, I don't think it was a coincidence. There were blood clots. They found the blood clots. He was a trucker, and truckers do get blood clots. But my understanding is that would be more likely in the legs, like a deep vein thrombosis situation. I think it's odd that he took that trip to Mexico the day before he died. But I don't know. I have enough understanding. I've tried looking things up, and I should ask some medical people I know, but what could potentially cause blood clots or something like that would be intentional, as far as like a medicine or a poison or something like that? I cannot imagine that he just happened to drop dead, unless for some reason the stress of his guilt of, oh crap, because we know he started to think, I'm their fall guy. Maybe this is all fake. Maybe there aren't zombies.
They had started to push him away. They had basically cut him off. They weren't communicating.
And he resented that. So unless the guilt somehow killed him, I think that there was something else behind it. I don't think it was an accident or just coincidence that Chad had him cremated.
No.
Because that's very unusual. It's not against LDS beliefs, but it is unusual in the culture. He did have Tammy embalmed, and then, oh crap, she's going to be exhumed and have an autopsy. Let's better get Alex cremated so that we can't have more investigation. I think his autopsy may not have been thorough enough, because I'm wondering if did he have some blood clots in his lungs, but did they necessarily cause his death? Because you can live with blood clots for depending on where they are and how much they block things. So,
and it could be, I don't know if Arizona's an actual medical examiner or just a coroner, because coroners are elected officials. They're not necessarily medical or even morticians, so they wouldn't know what to look for. So it could be they just didn't look deep enough. Oh, they saw the blood clots and decided that was the cause of death.
Yeah, that's my thought. I think it was at least a medical examiner who did the autopsy in Arizona. I don't know about the coroner elected situation there. But yeah, I think there was more to it. That's kind of my guess. They saw blood clots and went, well, that's probably what killed him.
Yeah. And then of course, now we'll never know, because,
Exactly.
And I, for a long time, thought 𝗠𝗂𝗪 might have done something to him on their orders, because, I've done a deep dive on her, and she was this strange new age mixture of new age and LDS, and so she did a lot of stuff with like heavy metals and things like that. So I'm thinking maybe she was slowly poisoning him over a period of time, but seeing her on the stand, I don't know if she would have done it or not.
Yeah, I think the new agey thing made her open to other beliefs and ideas, and then vulnerable to Chad's crazy. But yeah, listening to her, I don't think she has a conniving bone in her body. She's just gullible.
Yeah, and crazy. Full-blown crazy.
Yeah. So I know some people have thought that she was responsible for his death, but Alex is by. Possible, maybe, but I doubt it. Yeah. I think Chad and Lori probably were, or he took his own life somehow.
And then, like I said, Daybell's books, all of his children, especially Emma and Garth, are primary characters. The other three are like tertiary characters. So it's really telling who he put his emphasis on. So it makes sense they would be the two that would testify for him.
No, that's interesting. I didn't know that Garth was in his books too. That is telling. Wow.
Yeah, he wrote two apocalyptic series and one that was kind of like this. It's called what is it? The Ballad of Emma or something. So it's 3 books. It's all about this character named Emma who goes back in time and meets Brigham Young and Joseph Smith, and she ends up then again being a character like that was in her younger years. In her older years, she's a character in one of the apocalyptic series. And so, yeah, it's weird.
To say the least. That's just, oh gosh. Chad! No, he's just, I really hope some journalist manages to sit down with those other 3. I want to know what they think now. Did they watch the trial? I don't know. It's even if you're that brainwashed, nothing will change your mind. But if any of the kids have had a question mark in their heads and then watch it, like Leah, who has been silent as far as I know.
And I think Mark pretty much has too.
Yeah.
And he was the one that was on the mission when Tammy died.
Yeah. So. Yep. And that's another reason that got me mad that Chad rushed the funeral. I mean, for his own purposes on so many levels, but Mark could have come home for the funeral if he had waited.
Yeah.
A normal time.
He denied his son the last chance to see his mother.
Yeah. It's just so many levels of, are you kidding me? How selfish can you be?
Yeah.
I mean, and throughout history, religion has been used, of course, to do violent things, but like this is just a different, I don't know, malevolent level on the microcosm of evil, and it blows my mind. It just still does.
Exactly. So the prior's defense, I mean, of course it was crap, but at least he went one step further than Archibald. They mounted no defense at all, but do you think he did a good job with what he had to work with?
With what he had, he didn't have much.
Yeah.
I think, he had a whole lot of nothing to work with, so he did what he could. I think his arrogance didn't help. you know, and some of his gaffes that, you know, brought us watching a little bit of laughter and levity, but those things didn't do any good. Like even his expert witnesses only helped the prosecution. He brought forth nothing that could give the jury a moment of, okay, well, there's that's a good point. Maybe this or that. That he gave nothing for them to say maybe there's doubt. He was just throwing in random junk about the paintball gun or who drove the truck or, oh, Melanie Gibb had to have been there, and then gave nothing to back up those claims. So, and then I was also stunned in the penalty phase. They gave no mitigating things. Nobody testified to save his life. Not even Emma. Blows my mind. But what did you think of the defense?
I thought he did the best he could with what he had, but what I really got out of the expert witness, and I covered every day of the trial. I broke it down into like summaries. The entire time I was sitting there listening to the expert witnesses, it was like they were giving academic lectures on what they studied and what they did. There was really nothing of substance there. And then all the prosecution had to do was throw up, did you read the entire report? And there was always huge chunks of the report that was missing, that was never given to them. And I'm like, well, you can just throw everything you just said right out the window.
And that was the one thing that completely cracked me up, because Pryor kept trying to say, oh, well, they were using confirmation bias. Of course, he kept calling it confirmatory, which just cracked me up. But the idea that you would only look at certain details to support your decision. And I'm like, dude, you're the one who did confirmation bias, providing only cherry-picked reports for your special experts.
Yeah.
You give them everything or they're not going to be credible.
Every single expert witness he called was an expert witness that testifies for money. I mean, I'm not saying they don't perjure themselves. They'll look at a report, and if you're paying them, they'll find something to say about it. That's how an expert witness, I have lawyers in the family. That's how a paid expert witness works. They'll find something to talk about. That's all you did. You paid them. They said what they could based on what you gave them. At least on the prosecution side, there were actually people that investigated the case and actually did the autopsies,
And all of that's telling them that his expert witnesses who are paid to find something still didn't help.
Right.
There was nothing to find. There was nothing to say. There was like, oh, and by the way, like, we're missing part of 𝗙𝗍's body. Let me explain parts of her death that you didn't know were as heinous. Like, they didn't know that her jaw had been broken in 6 places and part of her skull was missing until the expert witness from the defense brought it up. So good job, Pryor.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that the bone expert was trying to say that maybe some of the bones mistaken for 𝗙𝗍 were actually animals. And I'm like, and then the prosecution just had to talk about the actual veterinary anthropologist they had at the site that put cat bones over here and human bones over here. I'm like, no, those were all human bones, you idiot.
And even the day of the search, when Emma said, oh, well, we have pets buried there. Maybe it's a dog or whatever. And it's, with all due respect, ma'am, I can tell the difference between human remains and animal remains. And especially when they had found JJ, there's no mistaking JJ for a raccoon. Like,
are you saying that that's a monkey? Are you saying that they buried a chimpanzee in the yard? Is that what you're trying to say? Because there's no... come on.
With 𝗙𝗍, there wasn't much left, but that's a skull.
It's a human skull, not a cat skull, not a raccoon skull.
Exactly.
And they had a veterinary anthropologist there from the University of Idaho that verified that's a human skull. That's not an animal skull.
Yep.
So.
And then Chad was stupid enough that after burying 𝗙𝗍, putting those same tools back in his shed.
Yeah, at least wash them, at least hose them off. I always say if there's ever a murder, I live in a very, very little small town in Tennessee. I'm like, if there's ever a murder anywhere near this town, they're going to come right for me, because I've said many times I could do a better job hiding a body than half the cases I cover.
Well, and then there's, me with all of I've done the kinds of research I've done over my 20+ career of publishing. My internet search just would be creepy as all get out. Like, So like I'll be watching Dateline with my husband, and there'll be the question of, now, why would someone Google blah, blah, blah? And he'll say, if they're a writer. And I'm like, okay, good. I'm glad you know that. Because someone could try to frame me with the creepy things I've looked up. But I have a reason. I swear, it's research.
It's my job. It's my job to look.
Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the sad thing is we'll probably never know the whole truth of, everything that happened. But, you think Chad's trying to martyr himself in a way? I've heard so many people talk about that.
That's my worry, honestly, since he didn't put up any mitigation. He didn't make a statement. He didn't. And then this wasn't to testify on his own behalf. This was a statement in sentencing or a statement after all of that. Nothing. And so the jury had no option but to give him the death penalty. There were no mitigating factors to balance against the charges. So by law, they had to. So I do wonder if he is then trying to go out on his terms. I said some people say maybe he's setting himself up for an appeal to get the whole thing thrown out.
Because Pryor was not death penalty certified.
Yeah, although in Idaho that doesn't matter, only if it's a public defender. They make sure all the public defenders who are taking a death penalty case are certified, but he chose to get private counsel.
Yeah.
They don't have to be death penalty certified. So I don't think appeals are going to work here. I think they will try. Mm-hmm. Or maybe he is trying to be the martyr to the point of, let's pull back any appeals after the initial automatic one.
Right.
And then get executed on his terms in a sick way.
Could be.
I don't know. We'll find out.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
This has been fun.
Yeah. Tell the viewers where they can find you, and I'll also link it down below.
Yeah, so it's just True Crime, Faith, and Chocolate on YouTube, or you can just search for my name, Annette Lyon. I'm pretty much on all the socials, Instagram, and I want to say Twitter. I can't say X. It just isn't. I just can't.
I know. I still say Twitter. or the app formerly known as Twitter.
Exactly. Yeah. So on Instagram it's Annette.Lyon, and then I'm on TikTok. Just I'm pretty much the only one. There's no S at the end of my name, and it's a Y, not an I. But other than that's Annette Lyon, pretty much just wherever.
And since you have chocolate in the name of your channel, I have to ask, what's your favorite kind of chocolate?
My favorite chocolate, there's two. One is the 𝗙𝗪𝗏, which is a Finnish candy bar.
Mm-hmm.
That goes back to some of my heritage. My mother is Finnish, and I lived there for a few years with my family. They have some of the best chocolate on the planet. And then when I don't have access to the 𝗙𝗪𝗏, it is 𝗙𝗪𝗏 with the dark chocolate on the outside. A lot of people think that's gross, but the 𝗙𝗪𝗏 is fantastic.
I'll have to check that out. I love chocolate too. I have to watch my sugar intake, but I really love the Lily's extra dark with this salted caramel. Really good. It's really good. And then I do love some Hershey's milk chocolate when I'm feeling dangerous. I know I'm a redneck, so I'm a little bit redneck in that regard.
But. You know what? Sometimes Hershey's will do the trick. And I will say it's out of print now, but I actually even did a chocolate cookbook. So it was called Chocolate Never Faileth.
Oh, wow.
I did not pick the title. My publisher did, but that was fun. Maybe someday I'll get the rights back and can publish it myself. But it's out of print now. But that was a fun project 10+ years ago.
I was a chef for many years, and I wasn't a pastry chef, but I did I did a little bit of chocolate work, so I know how intense that can be.
Yeah, I never thought I would be writing butter, whipped cream, and cocoa off my taxes. But that year I did. I did a lot of testing, and actually got sick of chocolate briefly. So, which is horrifying. But
when you're doing chocolate work, you never forget the first time you accidentally get some water in your melted chocolate, and it just turns into, and it seizes up and just turns into this clump. And you think, I can save this, and I'm trying to.
No, you can't.
You can't.
Start over. Yep. Been there. Yeah.
Well, Miss Annette, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Everyone, please go check her out. She does some wonderful work over there. Check out her books. I'll link everything down below, and I'll be back really soon. Until next time, keto and crime.